After an unforgettable first week on the island, Naomi, Chloe, Jaemin, and Minjun made a simple decision. Instead of flying home, they extended their vacation by another week. It wasn't because they had nowhere to be. It was because somehow life had become lighter whenever the four of them were together. The villa no longer felt like borrowed luxury. It felt like home. The second week began with the unmistakable smell of something burning. Naomi walked downstairs, still half asleep, only to discover smoke lazily floating above the kitchen island. Jaemin stood proudly in a brand new apron that boldly declared, "World's best chef." He was humming happily while staring at a pan that had clearly lost the battle with breakfast. Beside him, Minjun stood perfectly still, holding a fire extinguisher as calmly as if it were part of the morning routine. "Why do you already have the extinguisher?" Naomi asked, blinking. Without changing expression, Minjun answered, "Preventative measures." Chloe wandered in carrying 2 mugs of coffee, took one look at the scene, and burst into laughter. "He's not even waiting for the fire anymore." Jaemin dramatically placed a hand over his heart. "The lack of trust in this villa is unbelievable." At that exact second, the toaster launched another black slice across the room. Everyone watched it land on the counter in silence. "Breakfast is cancelled," Naomi announced. "Breakfast has evolved," Jaemin corrected. Chloe picked up a banana. "Evolution tastes fruity today." Even Minjun's mouth twitched into a smile. By the time they finished eating fruit, yogurt, and cereal, the kitchen had been cleaned and the jokes had only multiplied. Naomi leaned toward Jaemin. "One day you'll actually cook something edible." He smiled confidently. "Then you'll owe me an apology." "I'll frame it." Instead of answering, Naomi gently kissed him. Chloe pretended to shield her eyes. Disgusting. Cute, but disgusting. Later that morning, the concierge suggested visiting a hidden lagoon on the far side of the island. The four climbed into a small electric buggy with towels, drinks, and snacks. Jaemin insisted on driving, despite Minjun quietly offering to navigate. "I've got excellent instincts," Jaemin declared. 5 minutes later, the GPS calmly announced they had missed the correct turn. "Your instincts have terrible reception," Naomi teased. Jaemin ignored the comment and confidently took another road that looked even less correct. Chloe laughed so hard she started filming him. "Future documentary, Billionaire versus Basic Directions." Minjun sighed. "I've been preparing for this documentary for years." Eventually, the road opened onto a breathtaking turquoise lagoon surrounded by cliffs, tropical flowers, and crystal-clear water. The four stood silently for a moment before Naomi whispered, "Okay, this place is incredible." Jaemin immediately straightened his shirt. "Exactly where I meant to bring everyone." Naomi rolled her eyes but slipped her hand into his anyway. They spent hours swimming, skipping stones, and laughing. Jaemin attempted to skip a rock, only for it to sink immediately. Naomi's stone bounced 6 times. "I hate talented people," he muttered. "You only hate losing," Naomi replied. "That's also true." She laughed and kissed him again, leaving him smiling despite pretending to be offended. While Naomi and Jaemin wandered toward the edge of the lagoon, Chloe naturally slowed her pace until she found herself walking beside Minjun. For a while, neither of them spoke. Finally, Chloe glanced sideways. "Can I tell you something?" Minjun nodded. "You smile more than you think." He looked genuinely surprised. "I do?" "Mostly when your boss does something embarrassing," Minjun chuckled softly. "Occupational hazard. Have you ever actually taken a vacation?" Chloe asked. Minjun looked out across the water before answering. "Not really. Usually I'm working while everyone else relaxes." Chloe smiled warmly. "Then this week doesn't count as work. This week is yours too." He didn't answer immediately, but the small smile on his face said enough. As the afternoon sun began to lower, they packed their things and climbed back into the buggy. The ride home was filled with laughter, teasing, and terrible singing led by Jaemin, who insisted he knew every lyric while clearly inventing half of them. Naomi laughed until her cheeks hurt. Looking around at the people beside her, she realized something surprising. They had come to the island as strangers and unlikely companions. Somehow they were leaving it as something that felt remarkably close to family. The following morning, the resort offered guided kayaking along the calm coastline. Naomi immediately signed everyone up. Jaemin tried to act confident until the instructor casually mentioned that most kayaks were designed for 2 people. Naomi and Jaemin exchanged a quick glance before smiling at each other. Their plan was already forming. "Operation Cupid?" Naomi whispered. "Operation Cupid," Jae-min whispered back with an exaggerated nod. A few minutes later, while everyone collected life jackets, they quietly swapped the reservation cards. Chloe and Minjun unknowingly ended up assigned to the same kayak. Wait, we're together? Chloe asked cheerfully. Minjun looked at his card, then at Jae-min, who suddenly became fascinated by a nearby palm tree. Naomi was even worse at pretending, trying not to laugh. Coincidences happen, she said innocently. The first 10 minutes on the water were complete chaos. Chloe paddled enthusiastically. Minjun tried to steer. The kayak spun in a slow circle 3 different times. Nearby, Naomi and Jae-min laughed so hard that Jae-min almost dropped his paddle. "You're supposed to help us," Chloe shouted. "We're emotionally supporting you," Jae-min yelled back. Eventually, everyone found a rhythm. They drifted through crystal clear water, small fish swimming beneath them while cliffs reflected across the sea. Naomi reached over and lightly bumped Jae-min's shoulder with hers. "See? This was your best idea all week," he smiled proudly. "I have those occasionally." Naomi rewarded him with a quick kiss before paddling ahead. After returning the kayaks, the 4 relaxed on a quiet wooden dock overlooking the ocean. Jae-min and Naomi wandered to a nearby snack stand, loudly arguing over which ice cream flavor was objectively superior. Their voices slowly disappeared, leaving Chloe and Minjun alone. "Can I ask you something?" Chloe said, dangling her feet over the water. Minjun nodded. "Do you actually enjoy being a bodyguard?" He thought for a moment before answering. "I enjoy protecting people. I just never expected protecting one billionaire would involve burned kitchens, wrong turns, and pretending not to notice public kissing." Chloe burst into laughter. "You know," she said after the laughter faded, "I think you've laughed more in 2 days than you did during our entire first week." Minjun smiled. "That's probably your fault. I'll take that as a compliment." They talked for nearly an hour about ordinary things, favorite foods, childhood vacations, embarrassing school stories, and the strange way Jae-min somehow attracted trouble without trying. When Naomi and Jae-min returned carrying 4 ice creams, they immediately noticed how comfortable the two had become. Jae-min quietly leaned toward Naomi. "Progress," Naomi smiled without looking away from Chloe and Minjun. "Definitely progress." That evening, back at the villa, the 4 sat on the terrace watching the sunset with melting ice cream in their hands. Nobody said much. They simply enjoyed the breeze, the sound of the waves, and the comfortable silence. For the first time since Operation Cupid had begun, Naomi and Jae-min stopped planning. Maybe, they realized, Chloe and Minjun didn't need much help after all. The next afternoon, the 4 visited a famous cliff cafe overlooking the sea. The view stretched endlessly across turquoise water, and Naomi immediately claimed the best table. Jae-min proudly pulled out her chair before sitting beside her. Chloe raised an eyebrow. "Look at you pretending to be a gentleman," Jae-min grinned. "Pretending?" They ordered coffee and desserts while teasing each other over everything from pancakes to who had the worst sense of direction. When Naomi stepped away to pick up their drinks, a friendly tourist struck up a conversation, complimenting her smile and asking whether she was visiting the island alone. Before Naomi could answer, Jae-min casually walked over carrying both coffees. He slipped an arm comfortably around Naomi's waist and smiled politely. "Hi, I'm Jae-min." There was no anger or jealousy, just quiet confidence. The tourist immediately smiled, wished them a great vacation, and walked away. Naomi looked up at Jae-min with an amused expression. "That was it?" He shrugged. "Did I need a speech?" She laughed, set the drinks down, pulled him closer by the shirt, and kissed him. Chloe clapped once. "Well, that answered my question." Minjun covered his face. "They're getting impossible." Behind the cafe was a quiet wooden viewpoint suspended above the cliffs. Naomi and Jae-min deliberately slowed their pace, allowing Chloe and Minjun to walk ahead for once. "You know they're doing this on purpose," Minjun whispered. Chloe smiled. "Of course they are. Should we stop them?" "No, it's funny watching them think they're subtle." They leaned against the railing, watching waves crash against the rocks below. Chloe grew quieter. "Can I ask something personal?" Minjun nodded. "When you're not working, what do you actually like doing?" He thought for several seconds. "Honestly, I don't know anymore. Work became most of my life." Chloe looked out toward the horizon. "Then maybe this vacation is helping you remember." Minjun smiled. "A real one this time." "Maybe." Behind a nearby palm tree, Naomi and Jae-min peeked around the trunk like 2 children spying on a school crush. Jae-min whispered excitedly, "They're talking." Naomi gently smacked his shoulder. "Stop celebrating before they notice us." Unfortunately, they were immediately spotted. "We can see you," Chloe called without turning around. Jae-min froze. Naomi burst into laughter. By the time the four walked back toward the buggy, everyone was laughing together. Operation Cupid was becoming less about forcing romance, and more about giving Chloe and Minjin opportunities to simply enjoy each other's company. For Naomi, that realization made the afternoon feel even more successful than the beautiful view. The following morning, the four visited the island's enormous botanical garden, famous for its tropical flowers, glass greenhouse, and winding paths. Naomi immediately grabbed a map. "Rule number 1, she announced, nobody gets lost today." Jae-min looked offended. "People keep bringing that up as if it happened more than once." Minjin quietly replied, "It happened twice." Chloe laughed so hard she had to lean against a palm tree. Rows of orchids, butterflies, and colorful flowers surrounded them as they wandered through the gardens. Naomi exchanged a quick look with Jae-min before casually slowing down. "Chloe, didn't you say you wanted to see the butterfly house?" Chloe nodded. "Yeah," Naomi smiled innocently. Minjun was just saying he wanted to go too. Minjun blinked. "I was?" Jae-min gave him a thumbs up. "You absolutely were." Minutes later, Naomi and Jae-min quietly disappeared in the opposite direction. Jae-min looked far too pleased with himself. "We're getting really good at this," Naomi laughed. "We're getting really obvious." They stopped beneath a flower-covered archway where Jae-min gently brushed a loose curl away from Naomi's face. "Still worth it." She smiled and kissed him before they continued walking hand in hand. Inside the warm glass greenhouse, butterflies floated lazily between tropical plants. Chloe watched one land on her shoulder and smiled in amazement. Minjun stood beside her, surprisingly relaxed. "This place is beautiful," she whispered. "Yeah," he replied before quickly adding, "I mean, the garden." Chloe looked at him with a grin. "Smooth." They sat on a wooden bench surrounded by flowers while butterflies drifted overhead. Chloe became unusually thoughtful. "Can I ask you something?" Minjin nodded. "If you weren't Jaemin's bodyguard, what do you think you'd be?" He stared ahead for a long moment. "Honestly, I've never asked myself that question. I trained for this job my whole life," Chloe smiled softly. "Maybe it's okay to dream about something else too." "And you?" he asked. "I'd love to keep designing events," Chloe admitted. "Maybe even open my own company someday." Minjun looked at her with genuine admiration. "I think you could." When Naomi and Jae-min finally returned, they found the two still talking comfortably. Jae-min quietly whispered, "We interrupted them." Naomi smirked. "That's a good sign." On the buggy ride back to the villa, Chloe and Minjun naturally chose to sit together without anyone suggesting it. Naomi noticed immediately. Jae-min caught her eye, smiled proudly, and offered a silent high five. She rolled her eyes, but secretly returned it. The resort announced a friendly cooking competition for guests, and Jae-min immediately volunteered. Naomi folded her arms. "Didn't we agree the kitchen had suffered enough?" Jae-min looked deeply offended. "That was week 1, Jae-min. This is week 2, Jae-min. I've evolved." Minjun quietly muttered, "That's what worries me." Chloe laughed so hard she nearly dropped her apron. The instructor divided everyone into teams. Before anyone could react, Naomi cheerfully pushed Chloe beside Minjun. "You two look like natural chefs." Jae-min nodded far too enthusiastically. "Exactly. Great teamwork energy." Chloe caught on immediately and whispered, "They're doing it again." Minjun sighed. "I'm aware." Halfway through the class, Jae-min proudly announced he was making homemade caramel. 30 seconds later, smoke began rising from the pan. Minjun instinctively looked around for a fire extinguisher. Naomi burst into laughter. "It's amazing how you create emergencies using only sugar." Jae-min pointed dramatically at the instructor. "Nobody said caramel was aggressive." Meanwhile, Chloe and Minjun quietly worked together, laughing as they decorated a simple fruit tart. They naturally split every task without arguing once. When Chloe accidentally got flour on Minjun's cheek, she apologized before gently brushing it away. He froze for a second, making Chloe smile even wider. When the judges arrived, Naomi proudly presented her colorful dessert, while Jae-min revealed something that looked vaguely edible but impossible to identify. One judge politely asked, "What inspired this design?" Jae-min answered with complete confidence, "Optimism." Even the judges laughed. Chloe and Minjun's tart ended up earning second place. Jae-min dramatically placed a hand over his heart. "Betrayed by my own bodyguard," Minjun replied without missing a beat. I followed the recipe, sir. Naomi leaned against Jaemin's shoulder, laughing. Imagine that. Walking back toward the villa, Jaemin insisted the judges simply weren't ready for culinary innovation. Naomi reached over, took his hand, and kissed his cheek. You're terrible at cooking. I know. But you're very entertaining. He smiled proudly. I'll accept that victory. Behind them, Chloe glanced at Minjun. For the record, I had fun today. He looked at her and smiled more naturally than ever before. Me too, Naomi quietly noticed from ahead. She nudged Jaemin with her elbow. See? We don't have to force anything anymore. Jaemin looked back at the two walking together and grinned. Best plan we've ever accidentally succeeded with. The next morning, Naomi announced that she had found the perfect activity, a hike to the island's old lighthouse. Fresh air, incredible views, and absolutely no cooking, she said with a grin. Jaemin looked personally attacked. You're never letting breakfast go, are you? But Naomi smiled sweetly. Never. Chloe laughed while Minjun quietly handed everyone bottles of water before they set off. The trail wound through tropical forest filled with birds and colorful flowers. 10 minutes into the walk, Jaemin confidently pointed down a narrow path. This is definitely the shortcut. Minjun slowly unfolded the official trail map. Sir, according to the map, that's the maintenance road. Jaemin looked at the map, looked back at the path, then shrugged. Maps don't always understand vision. Naomi burst into laughter. Your vision has gotten us lost twice already. Instead of arguing, everyone followed him anyway. 5 minutes later, they reached a dead end surrounded by bushes. Chloe couldn't stop laughing. Congratulations, Captain Shortcut. Even Minjun smiled as Jaemin dramatically threw his hands into the air. Fine. Maybe the map deserves a little respect. Naomi stepped beside him, slipped her hand into his and kissed his cheek. See? Admitting you're wrong has rewards. After finally reaching the correct trail, the group climbed the last hill together. The old white lighthouse stood proudly above the cliffs, overlooking endless blue water. Naomi walked to the edge of the viewpoint, completely captivated by the scenery. Jaemin quietly wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Worth the walk? He asked. She nodded. Even with your navigation? Near the top of the lighthouse was a small wooden balcony, where only a handful of visitors stood. Chloe and Minjun naturally drifted toward one side, while Naomi and Jaemin wandered toward the opposite railing. You're smiling again, Chloe teased. Minjun pretended to look confused. Am I? Don't worry, she said. I'm starting to think it's a permanent condition around us. He let out a quiet laugh. Maybe this island is dangerous. Dangerous? It keeps making me relax. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching waves crash against the cliffs below. Chloe finally spoke again. I'm really glad we stayed another week. Minjun looked toward the ocean before answering. Me too. I didn't expect to enjoy this vacation as much as I have. Meanwhile, Naomi caught Jaemin secretly watching Chloe and Minjun instead of the view. She gently nudged him. Stop supervising them, he whispered back. I'm not supervising. I'm appreciating progress. Naomi rolled her eyes before giving him a quick kiss that left him grinning like a teenager. As the sun began to lower, the four slowly made their way back down the trail, joking about Jaemin's legendary sense of direction. He insisted history would remember him as an explorer. History will remember you as the man who got lost with GPS, Naomi replied. Their laughter echoed through the trees all the way back to the buggy, and for the first time, even Minjun joined in without hesitation. After several busy days, Naomi declared that everyone deserved a slower schedule. She booked 4 places at the resort spa despite Jaemin insisting that massages were just expensive naps. Chloe immediately replied, says the billionaire. Even Minjun hid a smile. The morning began with warm pools, quiet gardens, and a peaceful outdoor terrace overlooking the ocean. Jaemin spent the first 10 minutes pretending not to enjoy himself before finally admitting, fine, this is actually nice. Naomi folded her arms triumphantly. I'd like everyone to remember this historic moment. Later, while sipping herbal tea, Chloe noticed Minjun looking far more relaxed than usual. I've never seen you without your shoulders being up here, she joked, raising her hands almost to her ears. He laughed softly. Occupational hazard again. You're different this week, Chloe said more quietly. In a good way. Minjun looked toward the sea before answering. Maybe I forgot what it felt like to slow down, Chloe smiled. Then promise me you won't forget again." He looked at her for a long moment before simply replying, "I'll try." Across the terrace, Naomi gently rested her head on Jae-min's shoulder. He glanced toward Chloe and Minjun before whispering, "Do you think they know yet?" Naomi smiled. "Not completely," Jae-min grinned. "They're adorable," Naomi nudged him. "So are you." He placed a hand over his heart dramatically. Finally, recognition. That evening, the four sat beside the resort's infinity pool, watching the sky slowly turn orange and pink. There were fewer jokes than usual, but the comfortable silence somehow felt even warmer. Jae-min eventually stood up with 2 ice creams. "Emergency dessert delivery," he announced. Naomi accepted hers with a laugh before kissing him briefly. "Your desserts are much safer when somebody else makes them." Meanwhile, Chloe and Minjun wandered a few steps away to admire the sunset reflected across the water. "Can I tell you something?" Chloe asked. "Of course. When this vacation started, I thought you were intimidating." Minjun looked surprised. "Really? Now I think you're just kind." He looked away for a second, almost embarrassed. "Most people don't notice that. Maybe they don't look long enough." For several quiet seconds, neither of them spoke. The moment wasn't dramatic. It simply felt honest. Back near the lounge chairs, Naomi noticed the silence between them and smiled knowingly. Jae-min leaned closer. "Don't interrupt." She shook her head. "Not this time." As darkness settled over the island, the four slowly walked back toward the villa together. Chloe and Minjun walked a little closer than before without even realizing it, while Naomi slipped her hand into Jae-min's. The vacation was beginning to feel less like a holiday, and more like the beginning of a completely different future. On the second-to-last evening of their vacation, Naomi packed a picnic basket, while Jae-min insisted he had prepared the perfect romantic location. "Should we trust your sense of direction?" Chloe asked. "No," Minjun answered before Jae-min could speak. Everyone laughed. Fortunately, this time Jae-min actually followed the map. They reached a quiet, grassy cliff overlooking the ocean, just as the sun began to sink toward the horizon. Blankets were spread across the grass, sandwiches and fruit were unpacked, and the conversation drifted effortlessly between jokes and memories from the past 2 weeks. "I still think the burned toast was your greatest achievement," Naomi teased. Jae-min looked offended. "You're forgetting the caramel incident." "Nobody could forget the caramel incident," Chloe replied, laughing. After they finished eating, Naomi quietly caught Jae-min's eye. Without saying a word, the two stood up. "We're going to see if there's a better view over there," Naomi announced. Chloe raised an eyebrow. "There isn't." Jae-min smiled innocently. "Scientific research." Left alone on the blanket, Chloe and Minjun watched the sky slowly turn shades of orange and purple. For several moments, neither of them spoke. "It's strange," Chloe finally said. 2 weeks ago, we barely knew each other. Now it feels like we've known each other much longer," Minjun admitted. She smiled. "You don't seem nearly as intimidating anymore. That's disappointing. I worked hard on that image." Chloe laughed softly before her expression became more thoughtful. "I'm really going to miss this place." Minjun looked toward the ocean. "I think I'd miss the people more." The word surprised even him. Chloe turned to face him fully. "I'm glad you said that." For a long moment, they simply looked at one another, while the waves rolled gently below the cliffs. "Can I do something I've wanted to do for a while?" Minjun asked quietly. Chloe smiled without answering. He leaned forward slowly, giving her every chance to move away. Instead, Chloe closed the distance herself. Their first kiss was gentle, warm, and unhurried, lasting only a few seconds before they both pulled back, smiling. "That was worth waiting for," Chloe whispered. "Definitely," Minjun replied. A few meters away, hidden behind a tree, Naomi squeezed Jae-min's arm in excitement. Jae-min silently celebrated by pumping his fist once before Naomi whispered, "Don't you dare make a sound." He immediately covered his own mouth, making Naomi laugh so hard she had to lean against him. He kissed her forehead. "Mission accomplished?" he whispered. Naomi smiled. "Mission accomplished." The four walked back to the villa beneath a sky full of stars. Chloe and Minjun stayed side by side, no longer pretending there was nothing between them. Naomi slipped her hand into Jae-min's, and for the first time since arriving on the island, both couples walked home together. Their final full day on the island began with one simple promise: no schedules, no maps, and absolutely no talking about going home until sunset. Naomi made everyone agree before breakfast. Jaemin raised his hand. Can I still complain dramatically? That's unavoidable, Chloe answered. Even Minjun laughed. They rented bicycles and spent the morning wandering around the quieter corners of the resort. Every few minutes someone stopped for a photo, an ice cream, or another terrible joke. Jaemin proudly announced he had finally mastered cycling on the island. Seconds later, he rolled straight into a low hedge. Leaves clung to his hair as Naomi doubled over, laughing. I saw that bush attack you, she managed between laughs. Completely unprovoked. Jaemin stood up with as much dignity as possible. I chose to inspect the local vegetation. Minjun calmly pulled a leaf from Jaemin's hair. The vegetation inspected you instead, sir. Chloe nearly dropped her phone from laughing. Later, they reached a small beachfront cafe where they shared smoothies, fries, and stories from the past 2 weeks. Naomi looked around the table. Do you realize almost every memory we have involves Jaemin accidentally creating a disaster? Jaemin looked genuinely offended. That's unfair. Sometimes they're intentional. Naomi leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. That's why we love you. That evening, they returned to the quiet beach, where everything had begun. Shoes were left in the sand as they walked slowly beside the waves, each carrying an ice cream that melted faster than anyone could eat it. Chloe naturally slipped her hand into Minjun's. This time he didn't hesitate for even a second. Naomi noticed first and smiled without saying anything. Jaemin followed her gaze and whispered, I think our work here is done. Naomi nudged him gently. Don't act like you deserve all the credit. Excuse me, Jaemin replied dramatically. Operation Cupid was a masterpiece. Operation Cupid almost scared them away 3 different times, Minjun answered. Details, Jaemin said with a grin. They all laughed together until the conversation slowly became quieter. The horizon glowed orange while the sound of the waves filled the silence. I'm really going to miss this island, Chloe admitted. Naomi nodded. Me too. But I don't think it's the island I'll miss the most. Jaemin looked at her for a moment before gently squeezing her hand. Good, he said softly. Because I have something important I want to talk about tomorrow. Naomi searched his face, curious, but he only smiled. Tomorrow, he repeated. As the last light disappeared beyond the ocean, the 4 friends stood together watching the sunset. None of them wanted the day to end, yet each quietly sensed that the best part of their journey might still be waiting just beyond the horizon. The last morning at the villa arrived far sooner than anyone wanted. Instead of rushing to pack, the 4 gathered on the terrace for one final breakfast overlooking the ocean. This time, nobody allowed Jaemin anywhere near the kitchen. I'm being unfairly discriminated against, he complained while sipping coffee. Naomi smiled. You're being appropriately supervised. Chloe laughed and even Minjun nodded in agreement. After breakfast, Jaemin's expression slowly became more serious. There's something I've been thinking about for a while, he said. The joking around the table faded. Naomi, Chloe, you've both told us about your careers. You're talented, hardworking, and you've built good lives. But if you've ever wanted something bigger... He paused before continuing. I'd like to help you find it. Naomi frowned curiously. What do you mean? Come to Seoul, Jaemin replied. Not because you need rescuing. You don't. But I know people who would value your skills, and I'd like to introduce you to them. I think both of you could build incredible careers there. Chloe glanced toward Minjun before looking back at Jaemin. You're serious? Completely, Minjun finally spoke. I've watched them both these past 2 weeks. He's right. They do well in Seoul. Naomi looked at Chloe. Neither of them said anything for several seconds. Finally, Chloe smiled. Are we really thinking about moving halfway across the world? Naomi laughed softly. A few weeks ago, I'd have said no without thinking. Now. She looked at Jaemin, then at the friends gathered around the table. Now it feels like the right adventure. Several weeks later, the 4 stepped out of Incheon Airport together. The busy streets of Seoul stretched before them, full of possibilities. Jaemin pointed toward the city skyline with a grin. Welcome home. Naomi smiled at the word home more than she expected. The following months passed quickly. Naomi found exciting work that challenged her and allowed her creativity to flourish. Chloe joined a company where her cheerful personality and organizational skills quickly made her indispensable. With Jaemin opening doors and the 2 women proving themselves through hard work, both built successful careers they were proud of. Jaemin continued leading his company, but he made one promise he never broke, no matter how busy work became. Evenings belonged to Naomi, whether they were exploring new cafes, cooking together, under careful supervision, or simply walking through Seoul hand in hand. They never let success replace the happiness they had discovered on the island. Minjun's life changed too. Chloe refused to let him work every waking hour. She dragged him to concerts, street markets, parks, and tiny restaurants hidden in Seoul's side streets. Slowly, the serious bodyguard learned how to enjoy ordinary moments. One evening, he looked at Chloe and admitted with a smile, "I think I'm finally getting good at vacations." She laughed. "Good, because life's supposed to feel a little like one sometimes." One spring afternoon, all four met for coffee overlooking the Han River. Naomi looked around the table and smiled. "Funny, isn't it? We thought we were extending a vacation." Jae-min reached for her hand. "Turns out we were starting a new life." Chloe leaned comfortably against Minjun's shoulder. "Best decision we ever made," Minjun nodded. "Without question." As the sun slowly set over Seoul, the four friends laughed together exactly as they had on the island. The vacation had ended, but the friendships, the love they had found, and the future they had built together were only just beginning. And whenever someone asked where their story had started, they all smiled and gave the same answer: on a little island, where nobody wanted to go home.